Many people may be unaware that the fluorocarbon refrigerant contained in their home air conditioner, kitchen, fridge or car air conditioner can have severe impact on our environment if it escapes into the atmosphere. Did you know that just 1 kilogram of fluorocarbon refrigerant, typically used in your home split system air conditioner or car, leaking into the atmosphere has the same greenhouse gas impact as 2 tonnes of carbon dioxide? This is the equivalent of driving a family sedan for 6 months. If released into the atmosphere, this refrigerant depletes the ozone layer and contributes significantly to global warming. In an effort to limit the nation's environmental footprint, the Australian Government has developed specific laws under the Ozone Protection and Synthetic Greenhouse Gas Management Act 1989. By law, anyone working with air conditioning or fridges that contain fluorocarbon refrigerant requires a current licence issued by the Australian Refrigeration Council permitting them to undertake that work. Welcome to the Restricted Refrigerant Recoverer Licence tutorial. This licence is intended for those recovering fluorocarbon refrigerants from damaged equipment or equipment that has reached the end of its service life. It does not include recovery or treatment of non-fluorocarbon refrigerants, including hydrocarbons, carbon dioxide and ammonia. Typical equipment covered by the licence includes most domestic refrigerators, vehicle air conditioners, in-window air conditioning units, and split system air conditioning units. Typical licence holders might include those working as auto recyclers or auto removalists, operators of council transfer stations, metal recyclers and any other operator who handles end-of-life units that contain fluorocarbon refrigerant. To recover refrigerant, you will need a refrigerant recovery unit and other tools and equipment such as a recovery cylinder. Recovery cylinders come in various sizes, such as 65 kg, 22 kg, and occasionally 10 kg. You will also need scales for weighing cylinders, and you will need a gauge manifold to monitor pressure of refrigerant in the equipment and to isolate hoses and recovery unit. Industry codes of practice recommend service hoses are fitted with ball valves to prevent accidental loss of refrigerant. Where possible, always use hoses fitted with ball valves. However, many hoses currently in use do not have ball valves. Note that this will not affect your ability to recover refrigerant. You may also require spanners and other hand tools, and to recover refrigerant from automotive vehicles built after 1992, you will require an adapter for automotive attachment points. When recovering refrigerant from a refrigerator or an air conditioning unit, you will also need piercing pliers. Another tool used to pierce refrigerant lines is known as a bullet valve. The two halves of the valve are clamped around the line and a small pointed screw is wound in until it pierces the line. The colour-coded hoses used in refrigerant recovery are shown here, connected to a gauge manifold. Blue connects from the manifold to the unit containing refrigerant in a car, fridge or air conditioner. Yellow connects from the manifold to the inlet of the recovery unit, and red connects from the outlet of the recovery unit to the yellow recovery cylinder. Refrigerant gases come under the heading of a hazardous material, and safety when working with them is very important in order to prevent harm to workers, members of the public, property and the environment. Recovery of refrigerant should never be conducted in confined spaces, as there is a potential risk of asphyxiation, and so good ventilation is vital. At all times during refrigerant recovery, protective personal equipment must be used. You probably know this as PPE. PPE to be worn includes eye protection, goggles or safety glasses, hand protection, safety or chemical resistant gloves, long sleeves, long pants and safety boots. And if you are working in the field, you might also be required to wear head protection such as a hard hat and a safety fluoro vest. Never use heat from a gas torch or any other source when recovering refrigerant or where refrigerant gases are stored. You must inspect the recovery unit prior to each use. Make sure you check all hoses and fittings are in good condition, with no cracks or damage. Any with signs of wear or damage should not be used. Also, you need to check the seals for deterioration and replace if necessary. Check that the needle on the blue service gauge aligns exactly with the 0 mark. If it doesn't, you will need to adjust or zero the gauge. 1. Make sure the service hose is disconnected from the gauge. 2. Remove the front protective glass or remove the silicon access plug if fitted. 3. Turn the adjusting screw slowly until the gauge needle aligns exactly with the 0 pressure mark on the gauge. 4. Replace the front protective glass or access plug. Always check the test date stamped on the recovery cylinder. This is the date the cylinder was last pressure tested. Cylinders must not be used if they are more than 10 years past their last test date. Inspect the recovery cylinder for dents and bumps and other damage. Do not use a damaged cylinder. Return any unserviceable cylinders to a refrigerant wholesaler or disposal agent. Next, you need to identify the maximum filling capacity of the recovery cylinder. You should never exceed the capacity allowed for a cylinder. Overfilled cylinders can either release harmful refrigerants or explode, causing serious injury. A simple and safe rule to follow is to never fill the cylinder more than 80% or 0.8 of its water capacity. The water capacity refers to how much water an individual cylinder can hold and is stamped on the neck ring of each cylinder. For example, a 22 kilogram cylinder may have an actual water capacity of 21.6 kilograms. If in doubt about the maximum filling capacity of any recovery cylinder, always check with the manufacturer or a licensed refrigeration technician. Before recovering refrigerant into a cylinder, first weigh the cylinder to determine its current weight. Our example 22 kilogram cylinder currently weighs 21 kilograms. You also need to estimate the amount of refrigerant you expect to recover. As a guide, fully charged equipment usually contains the following amounts of refrigerant. Car air conditioners, 750 grams to 1 kilogram. Domestic refrigerators up to 400 grams. And a room air conditioner, 300 grams to 1 kilogram. The other weight you need to know is the tare weight. That is, the weight of the cylinder when empty. The tare weight is stamped on the cylinder. So for our example, we have a 22 kilogram cylinder with a stamped water capacity of 21.6 kilograms. The maximum allowed refrigerant weight is 80% of the stamped water capacity, or 17 kilograms. The cylinder currently weighs 21 kilograms, and its tare weight is 15 kilograms. We subtract the tare weight from the current weight, and this tells us that there is already 6 kilograms of refrigerant in the cylinder. Then we subtract the 6 kilograms currently in the cylinder from the maximum 17 allowed in the cylinder to calculate the safe remaining capacity of 11 kilograms. If we add the current cylinder weight of 21 to the safe remaining capacity of 11, we know that the cylinder cannot be filled beyond 32 kilograms on the scales. So if we wanted to recover refrigerant from a refrigerator with an estimated charge of 0.5 kilograms, then based upon the calculations, the refrigerant can be recovered without exceeding the safe remaining capacity of 11 kilograms. Before recovering refrigerant from any unit, it's also important to first identify the type of refrigerant it contains. Check the identification plate of the unit for the type of refrigerant. If the nameplate indicates that the unit contains hydrocarbon, for example R600 or R290, do not recover. Hydrocarbons are difficult to destroy if mixed with other refrigerants. Other than hydrocarbons, it is acceptable to mix different fluorocarbon refrigerants during recovery. Always check the refrigerant label. Only recover refrigerant that you can identify as being a fluorocarbon refrigerant and that you have been trained to recover. Do not recover any non-fluorocarbon refrigerants including hydrocarbons, carbon dioxide or ammonia. If an appliance is not labelled with the type of refrigerant it contains, do not recover any refrigerant from that appliance. contact a licensed technician for assistance as outlined in the Refrigerant Recoverer training booklet. If you're recovering refrigerant from a vehicle, then the refrigerant access point needs to be identified. The access point will vary with equipment type and age of vehicle, and there's often more than one. It will normally be the line that has a cap with a marking L. If not there, look for a refrigerant access point that matches the adapter on the recovery hose. Now you are ready to commence recovery. Remove the protective cap from the recovery access point. Connect the blue line to the access point. Air conditioners and refrigerators do not usually have refrigerant access points. Therefore, you will need to attach the piercing pliers or bullet valve to a suitable point of copper piping. Attach according to the manufacturer's instructions. If you have no instructions, locate a straight section of copper pipe that is accessible, avoiding welds and rusted or corroded areas. Connect the yellow line to the inlet valve of the recovery unit. Next, remove the protective cap from the outlet valve of the recovery unit and connect one end of the red line to the outlet valve. Remove the protective cap on the cylinder valve and connect the other end of the red line to the recovery cylinder. Open the valve on the gauge manifold. Open the gauge line ball valve if fitted. Open the cylinder valve. Slightly loosen the connections on the recovery unit to purge any amount of residual air in the lines, and then retighten. Open the inlet and outlet valves on the recovery unit and turn the unit on. Run the recovery unit until the gauge pressure reads 0 kilopascals. Refrigerant can still reside in the oil and will rise, causing pressure to again increase and show on the gauge. You can assist refrigerant flow, for example by gently shaking or tapping the compressor by hand, or by tapping gently with a mallet, or by rocking the vehicle. Repeat the process as often as required to recover all refrigerant, that is, until the gauge shows 0 and no longer rises. Once all refrigerant has been recovered, turn the recovery unit off and close the left-hand gauge manifold valve. After use, it is important to remove or purge any refrigerant remaining in the recovery unit. Some units have an automatic self-purging mechanism, which simply requires turning a valve on the recovery unit to the self-clearing purging position. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions for automatic purging. If there is no automatic purging mechanism on your unit, you will need to manually purge. Check all valves are open except for the gauge manifold, and all lines are still connected. Then, turn the recovery unit on and allow to run till the pressure on the gauge manifold reaches approximately -10 kilopascals. Turn the recovery unit off. Close the recovery unit inlet and outlet and cylinder valve and service hose ball valves if fitted. If you are going to recover refrigerant from another appliance, you can disconnect the blue hose from the access point and leave all the other hoses connected. Many workplaces set up all the recovery equipment on a hand trolley, leaving the service hoses connected between recovery jobs. When the cylinder has reached its safe filling capacity, you will need to change it over. If the red service hose does not have a ball valve, release the pressure in the red hose to the recovery cylinder by loosening the connector and allowing the pressure to release before removing the hose and replacing onto a new cylinder. If the red service hose has a ball valve fitted, ensure the valve is closed, remove the hose from the cylinder and replace on a new cylinder. If you are not going to leave the service hoses connected between recovery jobs, do the following. Replace the blue hose on the gauge manifold. Disconnect the yellow hose from the recovery unit and replace on the gauge manifold. Where the red service hose has a ball valve fitted, there will still be some refrigerant in the hose. Disconnect the red hose from the cylinder and reconnect it to the inlet valve of the recovery unit. Open the inlet valve, turn the unit on and run for a few seconds to purge the red hose. Close the inlet valve and turn the unit off. Disconnect the red hose from the inlet valve of the recovery unit and replace it on the gauge manifold. Replace the recovery unit valve caps. Replace the valve cap on the cylinder. Recovery is complete. As with all recovery processes and equipment, follow the manufacturer's instructions. Place a degassed label or sticker on the unit. This identifies that the unit has been emptied of refrigerant. Always store cylinders in a secure, cool place away from any source of direct heat. Records must be kept. Ensure you complete the form showing how much refrigerant has been recovered and has been returned to a wholesaler or Refrigerant Reclaim Australia. For more information on the fluorocarbon refrigerant process, refer to the Refrigerant Recoverer Training Booklet. The Refrigerant Recoverer Training Booklet should be referred to regularly as you are learning the recovery process. After you have obtained the Restricted Refrigerant Recoverer licence, you should keep the Refrigerant Recoverer Training Booklet in a handy place to use as a quick reference guide.